The invisible chains. You were told to be a good child. You were praised when you obeyed. You were punished when you questioned. Be quiet. Don't talk back. Just do as you're told. And so you learned. You learned that silence brings approval, that obedience brings safety, that following the rules, even when they make no sense, is how you survive. But here's a question no one ever asked you. What if your obedience is the very reason you're stuck? What if everything you were taught about being good was actually designed to keep you small, to keep you predictable, manageable, contained? Because that's what the system wants. Not rebels, not visionaries, just workers, quiet, polite, obedient workers. You're not lazy. You've worked hard your entire life. You followed every rule they gave you. Go to school. Get good grades. Get a safe job. Don't make trouble. Wait your turn. But you're still struggling. You feel like you're doing everything right and still getting nowhere. Like you've traded your dreams for security and still feel anxious. Like you've worn the mask of a responsible adult for years, but it's suffocating. Let me tell you something hard to hear. The system isn't broken. It was built this way. Built to reward compliance just enough to keep you coming back. Built to convince you that staying in line is noble, even when that line leads nowhere. Built to trap you in a loop of obedience while those who break free rise. Think about it. The richest people on earth, they're not the most obedient. They're the ones who question, challenge, and rewrite the rules. While the most polite, patient, law-abiding workers, they retire with just enough to survive, if they're lucky. Obedience is not about virtue. It's about control. And society is brilliant at hiding that truth behind praise, guilt, and fear. They told you to be humble, to wait your turn, to not ask for too much, to be thankful for what you get. But what if humility is just the sugarcoating on submission? What if being thankful is just the anesthetic they use so you won't rebel? You were trained to obey, not to think, to conform, not to question, to follow, not to lead. And every time you chose comfort over courage, they smiled. Every time you stayed quiet, they grew stronger. Every time you lowered your head, they tightened the leash. You don't need a cage when the prisoner locks the door from the inside. This is not your fault. You were programmed. By parents who were programmed. By schools that valued order more than truth. By jobs that prefer obedience over innovation. By a culture that mistakes compliance for character. But now you see the glitch in the matrix. Now you feel the frustration in your chest. Now you sense that something is deeply, fundamentally off. You're not crazy. You're waking up. This video is for the silent ones, the ones who've been good all their lives and are finally asking, why am I still stuck? It's for the hard-working ones who feel like they're running on a treadmill, moving fast, going nowhere. It's for the dreamers who were told to grow up, to stop being unrealistic, to be responsible. This is not a motivational speech. It's not an inspirational story. It's a confrontation, a reckoning between you and the quiet lies you've been living. We're going to peel back the layers, expose the invisible deals you've signed without realizing. Reveal how obedience has been weaponized to keep you poor, small, and silent. But this is not about becoming a rebel for rebellion's sake. It's about reclaiming your mind, rewriting your definition of good, and breaking the chain of inherited obedience that's been passed down like a curse. You're not here to obey. You're here to build, to create, to disrupt, to choose your life, not accept one handed to you. Because here's the truth. If obedience made people rich, teachers would be billionaires. If following the rules brought freedom, soldiers would retire as kings. If being good guaranteed success, you wouldn't be here wondering why you're still stuck. So let's talk about it. Let's dissect the trap. Let's unlearn what was never meant to serve you. Let's rebel, not with fists, but with awareness, with choices, with courage. You've been good long enough. Now it's time to be free. The myth of goodness, why obedience is not virtue. We've been taught since childhood that being good means being obedient. But what if that's not morality? What if it's conditioning? Let's start at the root. When you were a child, good usually meant one thing. You did what you were told. You sat still in class. You didn't speak unless spoken to. You didn't question adults. You ate what you were given. You smiled when asked to. That was good. That was being a good boy or a good girl. But strip away the language, and what does it really mean? Compliance. You were trained to associate goodness with obedience, not with critical thinking, not with courage, not with truth, and certainly not with resistance. As you got older, the world reinforced this illusion. The student who memorizes the most and causes no disruption is labeled excellent. The employee who shows up on time and never challenges authority is called reliable. The citizen who pays taxes without complaint and accepts every policy is praised as responsible. But what if excellence, reliability, and responsibility are just rebranded forms of submission? What if society has redefined virtue not as independent moral strength, but as your ability to follow directions? Think about it. A model student is someone who accepts the curriculum without asking who created it. A loyal employee is someone who builds another man's dream while sacrificing their own. A law-abiding citizen is someone who follows laws even when they're unjust because they were told to. Is that virtue? Or is that domestication? Let's go deeper. Virtue, in its purest sense, is doing what is right, even when it's hard. But obedience is often doing what is easy, even when it's wrong. History proves this. Slavery was legal. Apartheid was legal. The Holocaust was legal. Millions of people participated not because they were evil, but because they were obedient. They were taught that obeying the system was moral, even when the system was monstrous. That's the danger of blind obedience. It allows evil to hide behind uniforms, policies, and polite smiles. You don't need to be cruel to do harm. You just need to be compliant in a cruel system. That's what makes obedience so seductive. It looks like kindness. It feels like safety. It gives you praise, promotions, and approval. But deep down, it robs you of something far more valuable: your discernment, your voice, your power to say no. We often think of rebellion as violent, as something wild and angry. But sometimes rebellion is as simple as a whisper. This doesn't feel right. I don't agree. I won't do that. And that's when the world turns on you. Suddenly, you're not good anymore. You're difficult. You're uncooperative. You're disrespectful. Why? Because you've broken the illusion. You've chosen integrity over compliance. You've remembered that virtue is not obedience, it's truth. The truth is, obedience has been weaponized. It's been packaged as virtue so they can control you without force. If you think being good means staying in line, they never need to push you. You'll push yourself. You'll silence yourself. You'll police your own thoughts. You'll suppress your own questions. And they'll thank you for it. You'll go to bed feeling guilty, not because you did something wrong, but because you dared to disagree. So let's ask the real question. What would you do if you weren't afraid of being bad? What would you say if you weren't terrified of disapproval? Who would you be if your worth wasn't tied to obedience? The world doesn't need more obedient workers. It needs conscious humans. People who can think, feel, discern, and choose, not just follow. Obedience is easy, but virtue, true virtue, is hard. It means risking comfort for conviction. It means standing up when it's easier to stay seated. It means choosing what's right, even if it's unpopular. And in today's world, that's the greatest rebellion of all. You weren't born to be good by their definition. You were born to be true by your own. How the system defines good and why it benefits them. Who gets to define what good means? You? Your family? Your religion? Not quite. In most modern societies, goodness is not a universal truth. It's a construct designed by the system for the system. From the moment you're born, you're not just being raised, you're being conditioned. Conditioned to be palatable, predictable, profitable. You see, the system doesn't want people who are free. It wants people who are useful. And what's more useful than someone who obeys without questioning? Let's get specific. The system teaches you to be hardworking, but only for others' dreams. Humble, so you don't ask for more. Patient, so you tolerate injustice longer. Respectful, even to authority that hasn't earned it. Selfless, as long as you serve the system before yourself. Sounds like virtue, doesn't it? But look again. These traits are only praised when they serve them, not you. You're praised for working overtime, but not for quitting to build your own business. You're celebrated for staying calm when mistreated, but not for speaking out. You're called loyal for staying in a job that drains your soul, but reckless if you leave it. So again, who does your goodness actually benefit? The truth is uncomfortable. You were never taught to be good. You were taught to be useful to a machine that doesn't care about you. This is not morality, it's management. And the best managed workers are the ones who never realize they're being used. Let's break it down even further. The system, whether government, corporations, or cultural institutions, wants three things from you. Compliance, so they don't have to waste resources on control. Productivity, so they can extract value from your time and labor. Silence, so you don't disrupt others who are still asleep. That's the formula. Be compliant, produce for the system, stay silent. And if you do this well, they'll give you enough salary to survive, but not enough to escape. Enough praise to feel seen, but not enough to feel powerful. Enough security to feel comfortable, but never free. It's just like feeding a pet. You don't want the dog to run away, so you keep him fed, but dependent. You don't want the worker to rebel, so you keep him paid, but stuck. And the most sinister part? They make you believe it was your choice. They let you pick your school, your job, your path, within the boundaries they designed. You think you're free, but you're just choosing the color of your prison walls. That's how deep the system goes. This is why people stay poor even when they're smart, even when they're hardworking, even when they do everything right. Because the system doesn't reward potential, it rewards compliance. And the more compliant you are, the easier you are to predict, to tax, to use, to replace. You are not a threat, you are an asset, but you'll never be a partner. Because partnership implies equality, and the system doesn't want equals. It wants workers, followers, good citizens. Here's the twisted irony. If you question the system, you're seen as dangerous. If you criticize the rules, you're called rebellious. If you seek your own truth, you're labeled ungrateful. They've trained the masses to defend the very structure that keeps them powerless. That's how powerful the programming is. They don't need guards at the gates. They've built gates inside your mind. But the moment you see it, the moment you realize that your goodness has been weaponized, something shifts. You begin to ask, what if I'm not wrong for wanting more? What if my anger is justified? What if rebellion is not sin, but survival? And most importantly, what if I stop playing the role they wrote for me? This isn't a call to chaos. It's a call to clarity. To understand that being good in a broken system often means being broken yourself. And until you reclaim the meaning of good from the hands of those who benefit from your obedience, you will continue to serve their goals, not your own. You are not here to be useful to them. You are here to be true to you. The economic reward system. Loyalty pays just enough. Let's be honest. If obedience is so virtuous, why doesn't it lead to wealth? You followed the rules, you were patient, you were loyal. But where did that get you? Still worrying about bills, still afraid to lose your job, still dreaming of a freedom that never seems to come. Because here's the harsh truth. The system was never built to make you rich. It was built to make you loyal. And loyalty in this world is rewarded with just enough to keep you from leaving. Look around. The most obedient workers often struggle the most. They're the ones who stay at the same job for 20 years, grateful for a 3% raise. They're the ones who follow every rule, pay every fee, jump through every hoop, and still end up one emergency away from financial ruin. That's not an accident. That's the design. Let's talk about how this system works, how obedience is economically incentivized just enough to keep you trapped. 1. Just enough paychecks. You work 40+ hours a week, and they pay you just enough. Not enough to save, not enough to quit, just enough to keep you dependent. They don't want you rich, they want you reliable. If you had real money, you'd have options, and people with options are dangerous to the system. So instead, they keep you in the middle, where you're tired but still hopeful, frustrated but still obedient. It's a psychological trap. Hope keeps you working, fear keeps you quiet. 2. Promotions as illusions. Sometimes they offer you a promotion, more responsibility, more pressure, a slightly higher paycheck. But the trap is the same. You're still trading your time for money, still serving someone else's vision, still building a ladder that doesn't lead anywhere meaningful. They let you feel like you're moving up, when really they're just tightening the leash. The corner office is still inside the same building. The golden cage is still a cage. 3. Security over sovereignty. One of the most effective tools of control is the illusion of security. Stay here, it's safe. Don't take risks, you have benefits. Don't quit, you have a steady paycheck. But here's the catch. Security is not freedom. It's comfort with chains. The system rewards you for staying inside the box. And the longer you stay, the harder it is to leave. You become addicted to stability. And stability becomes your prison. They gave you health insurance, but they took your ability to dream. They gave you a retirement plan, but they took your fire. They gave you a title, but they erased your name. 4. Debt as a leash. Let's not forget how they reinforce this trap. Debt. Student loans, credit cards, mortgages, car payments. You work to pay off the life they told you to build. You owe so much you can't afford to stop. And so you obey, not out of virtue, but out of survival. Debt is not just financial, it's psychological servitude. And they use it to make sure you don't rebel. 5. Praise as a sedative. The system is smart. It doesn't just use money to keep you in line. It uses praise. You're doing the right thing. You're being responsible. Your loyalty will pay off. But pay off for who? Most of the time, it's not you. It's the shareholders, the CEO, the politician, the landlord. You're praised for being good, while they extract the best years of your life. It's not appreciation, it's manipulation in a nice suit. So why does this work? Because most people are afraid. Afraid to lose what little they have. Afraid to be seen as selfish. Afraid to risk the unknown. So they stay. They stay in jobs they hate. They stay in systems that devalue them. They stay loyal to a machine that would replace them in a second. And the system smiles, because it doesn't need to force you. It trained you to force yourself. But here's what they don't tell you. Loyalty is not the same as value. Being loyal doesn't mean you'll be taken care of. It just means you're easy to manage. And in an economy that thrives on your obedience, the biggest threat is not a thief or a criminal. It's a person who wakes up. A person who stops playing by rules they didn't write. A person who realizes their time is more valuable than their title. A person who dares to say, no more. So ask yourself, are you being rewarded or are you being managed? Are you being valued or are you being used? And most of all, is your loyalty serving you or is it keeping you exactly where they want you? Because if loyalty only pays just enough to keep you struggling, then maybe it's not loyalty. Maybe it's slavery dressed in a paycheck. School, work, die. The conveyor belt of obedience. Let's trace it back to the beginning. Not your first job, not your first paycheck, your first classroom. Because before the system could use you, it had to shape you. And where better to start than school? From the moment you walk through the school doors, the process begins. You're given a desk, a uniform, a schedule. You're told when to sit, when to speak, when to ask for permission to use the bathroom. You're not learning how to think. You're learning how to obey. School doesn't reward creativity. It rewards compliance. You get A's for memorizing, not questioning. You get gold stars for silence, not curiosity. You're punished for disrupting the class, even if your question is valid. Over time, the message becomes clear. Follow the rules, stay in line, raise your hand, don't stand out. And if you do it well, they say, "You are such a good student." But good at what? Good at obedience. You see, the modern education system wasn't built to create thinkers. It was built to create workers. Factory-style education for factory-style jobs. A conveyor belt of human labor dressed up as preparation. You move from one grade to the next, not based on how much you've grown, but on how well you've conformed. By the time you graduate, you've spent over a decade in conditioning. Conditioning that tells you knowledge equals memorization, success equals approval, authority equals unquestionable. You've been trained not just in subjects, but in submission. Think of it like this. The bell rings. You move to the next class. The bell rings. You eat lunch. The bell rings. You go home. One day, the bell will be your morning alarm, your office time, your 30-minute lunch break. It never stopped. It just changed costumes. Then comes college. Not because you want to learn, but because you were told you have to. Even if it means going into debt. Even if you don't know what you want to do. Even if the degree won't guarantee a job. Why? Because you were told that's what good people do. You were sold a dream. Work hard, get a degree, get a good job. But no one told you the system changed the rules and forgot to update the script. Now you're an adult, and the conveyor belt continues. You go from school to work to retirement to death. School taught you to obey. Work demands that you continue. Retirement is your reward for a lifetime of submission, but only if you survive that long. Let's look at your average adult life. You wake up to an alarm. You commute in traffic. You sit in a cubicle. You take lunch when allowed. You ask permission to take a day off. Sound familiar? That's not freedom. That's institutionalized obedience, carried from childhood to adulthood without question. You're not lazy. You've just been moving through the system exactly as you were taught. And that's the trap. You're praised for never stopping to ask, is this what I really want? And what about the rebels in school? The ones who questioned teachers, the ones who didn't sit still, the ones who refused to memorize without understanding. They were labeled problem students, unfocused, difficult. But many of them went on to become creators, entrepreneurs, leaders. Why? Because they refused to be molded. They refused to be programmed. They understood early that obedience is not the same as intelligence, that following rules blindly is not a virtue, it's a risk. Now ask yourself this. If school was meant to prepare you for life, why didn't it teach you how to manage money, how to build wealth, how to start a business, how to handle failure, how to trust yourself? Simple, because those things create independence, and the system doesn't want independence. It wants dependence. It wants people who are smart enough to do the job, but not wise enough to question the system behind the job. This isn't about hating teachers. It's not about rejecting learning. It's about exposing a system that confuses training with education. Real education teaches you how to think. The system teaches you what to think and punishes anything else. So here you are now, an adult running on a track laid down in childhood. You're not dumb, you're not weak, you're simply conditioned. But here's the good news. Conditioning can be undone. It starts with awareness, with asking dangerous questions, with stepping off the conveyor belt. Because until you break the cycle, you're not living your life. You're living the one they scripted for you at 6 years old. School, work, die. Or wake up, question, and choose. The system fears those who choose. The invisible contracts, comfort in exchange for dreams. Not all chains are visible. Not all prisons have bars. Some prisons look like comfort. Some chains feel like routine. And the most dangerous contracts are the ones we sign without realizing. You see, most people didn't consciously choose a life of quiet dissatisfaction. They didn't wake up one day and say, "I want to settle. I want to forget my dreams. I want to live on autopilot." No, they just made small agreements over and over until they forgot they were signing anything at all. These are the invisible contracts, unspoken deals between you and the system, written not in ink, but in fear, signed not with your hand, but with your habits. And once you accept them, they shape your entire life. Let's look at them one by one. Comfort in exchange for purpose. This contract says, you don't have to chase your calling, you just have to pay your bills. And in return, you get a stable job, a predictable paycheck, a life that looks normal. But at what cost? You stop creating, you stop dreaming, you become a shell, functional but unfulfilled. You don't hate your life, but you don't love it either. You've traded your fire for familiarity, and no one told you how quietly that can kill you. Security in exchange for freedom. This one whispers, don't take risks, stay where it's safe, don't be foolish. And so you stay in relationships that drain you, jobs that devalue you, cities that shrink you, all because you're promised security. But security without freedom is captivity. You might be safe, but are you alive? Respect in exchange for authenticity. This contract says, if you follow the rules, people will like you. If you conform, you'll be accepted. And so you hide who you really are. You dress the part. You say the right things. You blend in. But inside, you feel unknown, invisible, lonely, even in a crowd. You're not being rejected because no one truly sees you in the first place. You've traded truth for approval, and the price is your soul. 4. Approval in exchange for voice. You are taught, don't speak too loud, don't make a scene, don't be difficult. And so, you become silent, polite, agreeable. Even when something feels wrong, even when your boundaries are violated, even when your truth is screaming to be heard, you gave up your voice for the illusion of peace. But peace that silences truth is not peace, it's compliance in disguise. 5. Predictability in exchange for passion. You chose the job you could get. You stayed in the city that made sense. You married when everyone else did. It was easier that way, more convenient. But now you look around and wonder, where did the passion go? When was the last time I felt excited? Why does everything feel so flat? Because passion requires risk, and you chose predictability. No one blames you. It was safer. It made people happy. But you forgot to check, does it make you happy? And here's the trick. The system never forces you to sign these contracts. It just makes the alternatives look terrifying. Chase your dream? What if you fail? Speak your truth? What if people leave? Start over? What if you lose everything? And so, you choose comfort. You tell yourself it's mature. You call it being realistic. You label your fear as wisdom. But deep down, you feel it. You've been living someone else's life, playing by someone else's rules, denying the parts of you that once believed in more. Here's the truth. The system doesn't steal your dreams. It convinces you to trade them voluntarily. And you sign the deal, one compromise at a time, until one day you wake up in a life that looks fine on paper, but feels empty in your chest. But this isn't the end, because here's what no one tells you. Contracts can be broken, even the invisible ones. You can tear them up the moment you realize comfort isn't worth your creativity. Safety isn't worth your soul. Approval isn't worth your silence. Normalcy isn't worth your fire. You were not born to cope. You were born to create. You were not born to fit in. You were born to break patterns. So ask yourself, what invisible contracts have I signed? Which ones am I ready to break? Because the system will not tear them for you. It profits too much from your submission. Only you can choose discomfort over regret, risk over numbness, freedom over obedience. And when you do, you don't just reclaim your dreams, you reclaim yourself. Why rebels rise and rule the game. Let's flip the script. If obedience keeps you poor, then what does rebellion give you? Freedom? Wealth? Power? Maybe. But more than anything, it gives you your life back. Because the people who rise, the ones who lead, build, create, and dominate, they aren't the ones who followed the rules. They're the ones who questioned them, broke them, rewrote them. Let's be clear. We're not talking about rebellion for the sake of ego. We're talking about intelligent defiance, the kind that sees through the illusion, the kind that understands if the system is rigged, I need to stop playing by its rules. That's what the rich do. That's what visionaries do. That's what creators do. They don't wait for permission. They don't ask if it's okay. They don't obey a structure that was built to contain them. They build new structures. Think of every person who changed history. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, Muhammad Yunus, Malala, Rosa Parks, Richard Branson, Jay-Z, Viktor Frankl, Nelson Mandela. Different fields, different battles, but one thing in common. They didn't obey. They saw the cracks in the system, and instead of patching them, they walked through. Here's the hard truth. You don't rise by fitting in. You rise by standing out. And standing out means saying no when others stay silent, leaving the path when others keep marching, starting before you're ready, risking being misunderstood, enduring mockery before respect. Rebels eat failure for breakfast. They wear rejection like armor. They understand that obedience might win you approval, but rebellion? That's where the real rewards live. But here's what most people miss. Rebels don't start out brave. They start out fed up, tired of waiting, tired of pleasing, tired of living small. They get to a point where the pain of staying in the system outweighs the fear of leaving it. And that's when everything changes. That's when the rebel is born. Not in anger, but in awakening. Because once you taste freedom, even just a drop, obedience starts to feel like poison. The office becomes a cage. The praise feels hollow. The safe path feels suffocating. You begin to crave more autonomy, more meaning, more truth, more of yourself. And to get it, you must break the rules written for someone else's benefit. Here's the secret the system doesn't want you to know. The game is rigged, but it's also editable. You can opt out. You can walk away. You can build your own system, your own value, your own voice. And when you do, the same people who once called you reckless will later call you visionary. The same ones who said, "You've changed," will ask how you did it. Because deep down, they want what you have, the courage to be free. Let's look at how rebels rule. They create, not consume. Obedient people consume. They follow trends. They buy what's marketed to them. They live inside the box. Rebels create. They design. They challenge. They flip the box upside down and build something better. Creation is rebellion in action. They invest, not obsess. Obedient people work for money. Rebels make money work for them. They invest in skills, assets, ideas, themselves, because they know the real power isn't in earning, it's in owning. They serve truth, not applause. Obedient people seek validation. Rebels seek alignment. They don't need to be liked. They need to be honest with themselves, with the world. They'd rather be hated for the truth than loved for a lie. They break cycles, not repeat them. Obedient people pass down the script. Rebels burn it. They say, "I will not raise my children in fear. I will not worship a paycheck. I will not live for weekends and die in retirement. I will not trade my fire for furniture and a 30-year mortgage." Rebels break the chain and build legacies. And the best part? You don't need anyone's permission to begin. You just need one thing: a moment of truth so powerful you can no longer pretend. After that, the rebellion is inevitable. Not explosive, not angry, just true. And once you step into that truth, you don't just escape the system, you outgrow it. So if you've ever felt like you didn't belong, like the rules never made sense, like something inside you wants more, you're not broken, you're not lost. You're just a rebel waiting to rise. Fear, shame, and the policing of each other. You'd think the system needs guards, that it needs enforcers, that it uses laws and punishment to keep you in line, and sometimes it does. But the truth is far more subtle, far more powerful. The system doesn't need to police you if it can train you to police yourself. And better yet, if it can train you to police each other. Let's talk about the real tools of control. Not guns, not bars, not handcuffs, but two quiet forces that shape nearly every decision you make. Fear, shame. They don't scream, they whisper. What will people think? Don't embarrass yourself. Stay humble. You're not special. You're too much. Who do you think you are? These voices aren't random. They're programmed. They were installed in you by your family, your teachers, your religion, your coworkers, your community. Not because they're evil, but because they were programmed too. They were taught to fear nonconformity, to avoid risk, to equate obedience with goodness and deviation with danger. So when you begin to rise, when you question the rules, challenge the script, or claim your voice, it's not the system that stops you first, it's them. Your parents say, just be grateful you have a job. Your friends say, don't get your hopes up, that's unrealistic. Your partner says, why can't you just be happy like everyone else? It doesn't come from hate, it comes from fear. Because your growth threatens their stability. Your courage reflects their avoidance. Your truth makes them question their silence. So they try to pull you back. Not because they want you to fail, but because they need the world to stay predictable. And you are disrupting the pattern. This is what's known as social self-regulation. The system creates standards, then trains the people to enforce them on each other. You don't need police if the neighborhood gossips are doing the job. You don't need laws if shame is stronger than any fine. You don't need prison bars if your family can guilt you into staying small. The most effective control system is the one you willingly participate in. Let's break down how this happens. Uncertainty. Fear of rejection. Humans are tribal by nature. We fear being cast out, so we conform. We adopt beliefs we never examined, follow rules we never questioned, live lives we never chose, all to avoid standing alone, because standing alone feels like death. But here's the truth. Rejection from the wrong tribe is often the first step to finding the right one. Shame of ambition. You want more, but you're afraid to say it. Why? Because somewhere along the way you were told wanting more is greedy, wanting better is arrogant, standing out is selfish. And so you play small, dull your shine, speak softly. You shame yourself before anyone else can. But shame is not morality, it's emotional control. It keeps you obedient through self-judgment. The policing of potential. Ever notice how people mock the ones who try? The person starting a YouTube channel, the woman launching her business, the man changing careers at 40, the kid daring to dream big. The comments come fast. Who does she think she is? That'll never work. He's so full of himself. But here's what's really happening. They're not judging your ambition. They're judging their own inaction. Your courage holds up a mirror, and what they see hurts. So they try to dim your light, so they don't have to confront their own darkness. Guilt as a chain. Ever feel guilty for wanting more? Guilty for saying no? For choosing yourself? For not helping out at the expense of your peace? That guilt was planted by a society that teaches self-sacrifice is noble, martyrdom is moral, suffering is holy. But when guilt keeps you trapped, it's no longer virtue, it's a leash, and you wear it like a necklace, not realizing it's choking you. So what can you do? Awareness breaks the spell. When you realize fear is not truth, shame is not law, approval is not freedom, tradition is not destiny, you begin to step outside the cage. You start to question the voices, the rules, the shoulds. You stop asking, what will they think? And start asking, what do I want to create? And yes, there will be resistance. You might lose people. You might feel alone. You might be laughed at, judged, dismissed. But here's the secret. It's worth it. Because on the other side of fear and shame is your real life. Not the one scripted for you. The one you write, word by word, choice by choice, day by day. So the next time someone tries to shrink you, smile. Not because they're right, but because they've revealed something. You've grown beyond their comfort zone. And that means you're finally free. The generational trap, how obedience is inherited. You weren't born obedient. You were taught to obey. You didn't come into this world believing you had to settle, stay small, or be silent. That was programmed by your environment, by your culture, by your family. Because before the system could control you, it had to control the people who raised you. Let's be honest. Your parents meant well. They told you to behave, to be careful, to be realistic. They told you to go to school, get a job, and not take risks. They weren't trying to harm you. They were trying to protect you. Because in their world, obedience meant survival. Following the rules meant staying safe. And so they passed down what they knew, not because it was right, but because it was all they had ever been taught. This is the generational trap. Each generation hands down a script, one written in fear, struggle, and outdated survival logic. Play it safe. Don't make waves. Don't aim too high. Be grateful for what you have. Work hard, keep your head down, and don't complain. These aren't just sayings. They're inherited beliefs that slowly become your internal compass, even when the map they gave you no longer leads anywhere worth going. Think of it like a relay race. Each generation hands the baton to the next, not a baton of power, but of limitation. And they say, "Here, hold this. We carried it for 60 years. Don't drop it. Don't question it. Just run your leg of the race." But have you ever stopped and asked, where is this race even going? Because if the finish line is regret, exhaustion, and a retirement plan that barely covers rent, do you really want to keep running? Let's go deeper. Repeat. Inherited fear. Your parents were afraid of failure, of poverty, of standing out. So they gave you their fears wrapped in love and called it wisdom. They didn't say, "Be brave." They said, "Be careful," because that's what their parents said, and theirs, and theirs, and theirs. But caution repeated across generations becomes a curse of small thinking, of timid dreams, of generational surrender. Inherited self-worth. Maybe you grew up hearing, "We're not those kind of people. People like us don't get rich. Just be thankful for what you've got." It sounds humble. It sounds grounded. But it plants a dangerous seed. That success belongs to someone else. That dreams are for them, not for us. And so you grow up believing you must ask for less, expect less, become less. Not because it's true, but because it was taught. Like a hand-me-down jacket that never really fit you. Inherited scarcity. Money was tight. Opportunities were rare. So the mindset became, save everything, never risk anything, work hard no matter how little it pays. But what served them in survival mode strangles you in a world of abundance, because the game has changed, but the rules in your head haven't. You're still trying to win with strategies designed for a different time, and wondering why you feel stuck. This is not about blaming your parents. They did the best they could with what they knew. They loved you. They worked hard. They wanted safety for you, even if it came at the cost of freedom. But love is not the same as wisdom, and survival is not the same as living. If you want to honor your ancestors, don't just repeat their footsteps, walk them further. You are the pivot point, the moment the cycle can break. Because while obedience may have helped them survive, it will not help you thrive. The world today rewards boldness, creativity, innovation. It rewards those who say, "Thank you for the lessons, but now I must walk my own path." And yes, it's scary to go against the grain, to question what your entire bloodline considered sacred, to break family patterns that feel like law. But someone has to go first. Someone has to stop handing down fear disguised as tradition. And maybe that someone is you. Here's what's true. You don't owe anyone your smallness. You don't need to dim your light to honor your lineage. You don't have to repeat the struggle just because it's familiar. You can choose a new legacy, one where obedience is replaced with awareness, where safety is replaced with sovereignty, where fear is replaced with freedom. And when you do that, you don't just change your life, you change the lives of everyone who comes after you. So ask yourself, what beliefs did I inherit? Which ones are serving me? Which ones are silently stealing my potential? Because you are not just someone's child, you are someone's ancestor. And what you choose today becomes someone else's blueprint tomorrow. Breaking the spell. Awareness as the first rebellion. Before you break free, you must wake up. Because the most dangerous prison isn't made of iron, it's made of illusion. And most people live their entire lives inside it without even knowing it exists. They follow rules they never chose. They obey systems they never questioned. They chase goals they never wanted. Not because they're weak, but because they're asleep. This is the spell, a trance of normalcy, a lullaby of this is just how life is. You were hypnotized to believe work is supposed to drain you. Dreams are for the lucky ones. Wealth is for the chosen few. Comfort is the goal. Approval equals success. And once those beliefs settle into your bones, you don't need a master. You become your own warden. You silence your own voice. You kill your own dreams. You tell yourself, this is just the way things are. But what if it's not? What if everything you believe about life, money, work, and worth was never yours to begin with? Awareness is the crack in the wall, the glitch in the matrix, the moment you look around and whisper, wait, this doesn't feel right. It might be quiet at first, a discomfort, a restlessness, a vague sense that something's off. But that's where the rebellion begins. Not with a roar, but with a whisper that won't go away. So how do you break the spell? Not all at once, but piece by piece. Let's explore how awareness unfolds. Step 1. Notice the patterns. Start by asking, why do I do what I do? Why this job? Why this belief about money? Why do I stay silent in meetings? Why do I feel guilty for resting? Trace the answers. You'll often find a story that isn't yours, a belief passed down, a fear absorbed, a rule inherited. Once you see the pattern, you can question it. And questioning is power. Step 2. Observe the autopilot. Watch how often you say, I have to. That's just the way it is. I don't have a choice. I could never do that. These aren't truths. They're scripts. Autopilot responses from a life you never wrote. And the moment you recognize them, you realize you've been living someone else's idea of who you should be. Step 3, feel the friction. That inner tension, that dissatisfaction, that sense that something inside you is suffocating, that's not weakness. That's your intuition waking up. It's the part of you that remembers. You were born to create, not just comply. You were born to feel alive, not just secure. You were born to choose, not just obey. When you stop numbing that feeling, you start listening. And when you start listening, you can no longer pretend. Step 4, name the cage. Call it out. Say it. I've been living in fear of judgment. I've been obeying to feel loved. I've been chasing approval instead of purpose. I've been trading freedom for comfort. When you name the cage, you begin to unlock the door. What you cannot name, you cannot change. Step 5, choose curiosity over control. Most of us seek certainty. That's what the system promises. But awareness doesn't offer answers right away. It offers questions, hard ones. If I didn't have to be safe, what would I build? If I wasn't trying to impress anyone, who would I become? If I could start over, where would I go? These questions are dangerous, not because they'll destroy your life, but because they'll show you what it could truly be. But let's be real. Awareness is uncomfortable. It burns away the lies you've been living. It destroys identities you've attached to. It shakes foundations built on other people's beliefs. It hurts, but it also heals. Because after the collapse comes clarity. And with clarity, you finally start to see what's real. Here's what's real. You are not your job. You are not your family's fears. You are not your salary. You are not your obedience. You are not the person they trained you to be. You are something far more dangerous to the system. You are awake, and an awake person can no longer be controlled the same way. They may still work a job, but now they do it by choice. They may still follow a rule, but now they know why. They may still live within the system, but the system no longer lives inside them. That's the difference. That's the rebellion. So if you feel like everything you believed is unraveling, good. Let it fall apart. Let the illusion burn. Let the spell break. Because on the other side of awareness is freedom. Not the kind they sell you in commercials, the kind that lives deep in your bones, the kind you forgot you were born with, the kind they tried to bury beneath a lifetime of obedience, but it's still there, and now you've found it. Redesigning your role from pawn to player. You've woken up. You see the system. You see the trap. You see the chains that once felt like safety. But now what? Awareness is powerful, but it's only the beginning. Now comes the real work, redesigning your role in the game. Because for most of your life, you've been playing a role that was written for you. The obedient worker, the responsible child, the good citizen, the humble dreamer who never asks for too much. But now you know, you're not here to be a pawn on someone else's board. You're here to be a player, to make moves, to build strategy, to flip the board if you have to. This is the turning point. You stop living inside the system and start designing your own life. Let's get practical. How do you go from pawn to player? Not overnight, but one powerful shift at a time. Here's how the redesign begins. Target 1. Reclaim your mind. Your greatest asset isn't your resume, it's your thinking. But if your thoughts are still controlled by fear, guilt, and approval seeking, you're still a pawn. So ask yourself, who benefits from me believing this? Is this thought mine, or was it planted? What's a belief I need to break before I can grow? Clean your mental house, because freedom starts in the mind long before it shows up in your bank account. Target 2. Define your own metrics. Stop chasing what society says success is. A 9-to-5 job? A mortgage? A wedding? A retirement plan? Those are default metrics. But what if your version of success looks different? Working 3 days a week? Living in nature? Creating art? Being unknown but deeply fulfilled? Players define their own scoreboards. Pawns die trying to win someone else's game. Target 3. Shift from reaction to creation. Pawns react. They wait for instructions. They need permission. Players create. They wake up and say, "What do I want to build today? What needs to exist that doesn't yet? What would this look like if it were easy, free, and mine?" This shift is subtle but seismic. You stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What do I choose to create on purpose?" Target 4. Build value, not just labor. Obedient workers sell their time. Players create value. Value is not about how many hours you work. It's about how deeply you solve problems, shift energy, or spark transformation. A writer who changes lives. A teacher who awakens minds. A coder who builds freedom tools. A rebel who inspires others to wake up. Stop asking, "How can I earn money?" and start asking, "How can I serve deeply and freely?" Because the market doesn't reward time, it rewards impact. 5. Stop asking for a seat at the table. You were told to earn your place, to work hard, and maybe one day you'll be invited to the room where decisions are made. Forget that. If the table was built to keep you out, build your own table. Start your own thing. Form your own circle. Make your own rules. Revolution doesn't happen through permission. It happens through creation. 6. Align your work with your truth. When you're a pawn, you work to survive. But players, they work from purpose. They ask, "What am I here to express? What problem breaks my heart to witness? What would I keep doing even if no one applauded?" This isn't romantic, it's strategic, because truth has energy. And when your work aligns with your truth, you become undeniable. 7. Build assets, not just effort. Obedient workers trade time for money. Players build systems that work even when they rest. That could mean digital products, intellectual property, rental income, equity in businesses, personal brand leverage. You're no longer just working in the game, you're working on the game. That's the shift from pawn to player. 8. Surround yourself with other players. This is critical. You can't play big in a room full of people who still think playing small is noble. You need mirrors that reflect your power, not your past. Find people who challenge you, inspire you, refuse to let you shrink, because isolation is where pawns stay pawns. But community, that's where players level up. And yes, it's hard, because once you step out of your old role, people will try to pull you back. You've changed. You think you're better than us. Don't forget where you came from. But here's the truth. You didn't change to be better than anyone. You changed to be better than who you were told to be. That's not arrogance, that's evolution. So what happens when you fully redesign your role? You no longer wait for life to give you permission. You realize that no one is coming to save you because you were never broken. You were just miscast, in a role too small for your soul. Now, you're rewriting the story as the lead, the director, the architect, no longer trapped inside the system, but crafting your own. You're not here to obey. You're here to design, not to be moved, but to move others, not to live quietly, but to live fully. From pawn to player, and the board will never look the same again. The cost of freedom. It's not free, but it's worth it. Let's be clear, freedom isn't free. It sounds good on paper, it looks sexy in movies, but in real life, it's messy, it's uncomfortable, it's terrifying. Because when you step off the conveyor belt, when you stop playing the obedient role, when you walk away from the default life, you don't just gain freedom, you also inherit the cost of being truly alive. And make no mistake, there is a cost. But here's the truth. The cost of freedom is high, but the cost of obedience is your soul. So let's talk about what freedom really asks of you. Because the system sells you a lie. That comfort is happiness, that stability is peace, that staying in your lane is wisdom. But deep down, you know, anything worth having will demand more of you than staying small ever will. Bang! The cost of freedom is uncertainty. When you stop obeying the old script, there's no guarantee, no roadmap, no applause, no safety net. You're forging your own path, and that means at first it will feel like falling. But falling is not failing. It's learning to fly without the cage. You'll question everything. Am I doing the right thing? What if this doesn't work? What if I lose everything? And you might. But here's what's worse: living a life that never even tried. Bang! The cost of freedom is judgment. When you break the rules, people get uncomfortable. When you stop playing the game, you threaten those who still do. You'll be called arrogant, rebellious, unrealistic, ungrateful. Not because you're wrong, but because your freedom exposes their chains. Your courage makes their fear undeniable. Your choices remind them of their silence, and so they push back. But the greatest judgment will not come from strangers. It will come from the people you love. And still, you must choose you. The cost of freedom is responsibility. Obedience is easy. You do what you're told, you blame the system, you stay in the box. But freedom, now it's on you. You choose, you build, you face the consequences, you own your path. No more blaming the boss, no more blaming your past, no more hiding behind, "I had no choice." Freedom demands ownership, and ownership is heavy, but it's also honest. It gives you something obedience never can: power. The cost of freedom is loneliness. The path of truth is often walked alone, at least in the beginning. You'll lose friends, you'll outgrow communities, you'll say goodbye to comfort zones that once felt like home. But here's the gift. On the other side of loneliness is alignment. You begin attracting people who see you, not the mask you wore. You build relationships based on truth, not obligation. And in time, you're no longer alone. You're free and fully connected. The cost of freedom is letting go. Of what? Of old identities, of being liked, of chasing safety, of living to please others, of the stories you told yourself for years. It hurts, but it's sacred, because every time you let go of something false, you make space for something true. Here's the paradox. The cost of freedom is high, but the cost of not choosing it is even higher. Because if you don't choose freedom, you may keep the job, the approval, the comfort, but lose your soul. You may live 80 years in a life that never really belonged to you. You may reach the end and whisper, "I did everything right, and I still missed my life." That is the most expensive regret of all. So ask yourself, what have I been afraid to lose? What have I convinced myself I need? What is comfort really costing me? Because freedom has a price, but so does obedience. And only one of them leads to a life that's fully yours. Freedom doesn't feel safe. It feels real. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. Because when you choose freedom, even if you lose money, even if you lose people, even if you lose status, you gain yourself. And that is a trade worth everything. Rise of the Unobedient, a call to conscious living. This is the moment when you stop asking for permission, stop waiting for approval, stop hoping someone will rescue you from a life you never chose. Because now you know, obedience was never about goodness, it was about usefulness. And the more obedient you were, the more the system applauded you, not for who you were, but for how well you fit into its design. But that chapter ends here. You've spent enough time living quietly, enough time dimming your light, enough time surviving in a world that told you you were too much or not enough. Now something shifts, something ancient, something powerful, something that was never truly gone, only sleeping. Your sovereignty. You are not here to obey. You are not here to fit in. You are not here to be efficient, polite, and replaceable. You are here to remember that your time is sacred, that your voice is thunder, that your life is not a line to follow, but a fire to light. Because the world doesn't change through obedience. It changes when someone says, "Enough, I choose differently." The system can't handle the awake, the aware, the self-directed. That's why it teaches fear, shame, comparison, delay. But the truth is louder now, and it's whispering to you. You were never meant to be a pawn. You were born to be the player, the builder, the leader, the voice that breaks the silence. So what does conscious living look like? Not perfection, not rebellion for rebellion's sake, but presence, clarity, intention. It looks like choosing your path with eyes open, saying no without guilt, saying yes without permission, building from truth, not fear, listening to your own soul more than the noise of the crowd. Conscious living is not loud. It's still. But in that stillness is power. You may still work a job, but now you know why. You may still play within society, but you're no longer hypnotized by it. You no longer mistake obedience for virtue. You no longer confuse fitting in with belonging. You no longer see survival as success. You've outgrown the role they wrote for you. Now, you're writing your own script. Yes, the path will be hard. Yes, you will be misunderstood. Yes, you will walk alone at times. But you will also feel alive, honest, untamed. You'll look in the mirror and see someone real, not someone trained. And that is worth everything. So here's your call, not to arms, but to awareness, not to war, but to waking up, not to fight the system, but to stop letting it own you. Let the obedient world keep chasing approval. You chase truth. Let them seek promotions. You seek peace. Let them stay safe. You choose to be free. Because in the end, the system doesn't fear chaos. It fears consciousness. It fears the one who knows they were never born to fit in, never born to shrink, never born to trade purpose for paychecks. And now, that person is you. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. The moment you rise, not with noise, but with clarity. The moment you stop obeying and start living, fully, deeply, on your terms. Welcome to the rise of the unobedient. The world has no idea what's coming, but you do, because now you are finally awake. You were never meant to obey. So here we are, at the edge, where everything you were told begins to unravel. And what's left? You, raw, awake, no longer a follower, not yet a master, but finally, fully human. This isn't just about disobedience. It's about reclaiming the right to choose your thoughts, your direction, your values, your worth. Because no system, no job, no voice of authority has the right to define what your life should be. Only you do. They may still call you difficult, too much, too loud, too rebellious. But that's fine, because being too much is exactly what breaks cycles. Being unreasonable is how new realities are born. And choosing your truth, even when it costs you everything, is how you finally become free. So if this message found you today, it's not by accident. It's because a part of you is ready to stop nodding in rooms you don't believe in, to stop applauding lives that aren't yours, to stop chasing approval from people you no longer wish to be. You don't need more permission, you need more conviction. You don't need more rules, you need more reasons to say no to them. You don't need to be better at obedience, you need to be braver with your freedom. And if you're scared, good. That means the system didn't win, because the truly obedient don't feel fear, they feel numb. Fear means you're waking up. Fear means you still care. Fear means your soul is alive. So walk with it, not away from it. Let fear become your compass, not your cage. The next chapter isn't written. That's your job now. And whatever you do from here, just promise yourself this: you will never again trade your fire for someone else's comfort. You will not shrink to fit. You will not obey to belong. You will not bow to a system that never saw your light to begin with. You will live awake, audacious, unapologetic. And one day, you'll look back and whisper, "That was the day I stopped obeying and started living." If this message speaks to your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, speak it, be it. Because the more of us who rise, the less power the system has to keep us down. The world doesn't need more obedient people, it needs more awakened ones. And that starts with you.